Hello and welcome to Anty Matters. This video will be my second monthly update for all my colonies. It's now July and I don't know about you, but it's been baking recently. We got a little bit of bad news and a whole lot of good news, including a new species. Anyway, enough intro, we'll start with some of the good news. I got a new tank. I walked into the shop and spotted this beaut which was perfect size and left with an armful of glass. Originally I was going to make a larger natural setup for my Myrmica Rubras, but I couldn't get a recent nest build from Antscapes out of my head. Check out the link below. Anyway, he had a beautiful stone covered nest in a fish tank with fish, and I just could not get it out of my head. I had no idea about aquariums and fish, so got researching and quickly found out you had to get the nitrogen cycle going in your tank, so I left it going for 2 weeks. Probably wasn't enough time, but the fish are still alive, so it seems to have worked. While I was waiting for that, I started building submersible nests. I used kitchen storage boxes and placed around 1 kilo of imperial big sockets from my toolkit because I've got loads of those and I never use them. So I cleaned them off and chucked them in. Then I poured a bit of sand over the top of those and then compressed dirt. And finally about 1 inch or 2 of loose soil on top, which I had compressed so they could dig down into it quite easily. After the first week I wanted to raise the water level of the nests, and so I placed them on old bricks that I baked in the oven. They had nice little holes in them for the, I think, coolie roaches to hide in, so I let them be. Finally I placed some PVC pipe between the 2 taller nests at the back so they could safely traverse the water and not drown. This week, last week of July, I added in fish and a special surprise along with some water plants. So it's time to introduce all the new residents, and as it's the ants house really, we'll start with those. From left to right in the front we have the Lasius flavus colony, middle the Lasius niger colony, and right the Solenopsis typuna colony. Behind in a vase in the middle we have a Pheidoles colony, hint hint, and either side a splinter nest for my 4K colony at least. There's at least 1 queen in the splinter nest, and I'll go into more detail on these girls in a moment. We also have 15 assorted tetras. We've got 5 neon tetras, 5 flashlight tetras, and 5 black tip tetras. Then we've got 2 mollies and 4 colourful ones I've forgotten the name of, and 2 coolie loaches. I chose the tetras because they're pretty, the mollies because they're colourful and they'll suck up the ants if they fall into the water, and the coolie loaches because they're very good at knocking up the dirt on the floor of the tank. Best of all, I also got 1 frog. He's a brown dwarf African water frog and he's just so cool to watch. I'm going to get him some buddies soon, and he's called Fredo. Some of the fish have also got busy, and there's some baby fish swimming around. I'm going to have to wait till they're bigger to find out who's been doing it, as I don't have a clue at the minute, because the babies are just little and black, and they kind of look like the mollies, but they're black, and the mollies are white, so I'm a bit confused. To the ants. Time for some bad news. My Pheidoles nodus had a series of unfortunate events and have died. Started when the test tube hydrating their nest unbottomed and flooded the nest. I put them in my amboy nest and they moved in okay. The next day though, 50 of the workers at least had died. It was a nightmare. The soldiers were doing fine, but the queen was 100% stressed out and she would not settle. I popped them in the dark for 5 days and had another look, and the queen had some fungus taking over her body and she was dead. The soldiers kept on going for a week before finally they keeled over, and that's about it on them, so rest in peace. I knew something was off though with the queen, and so as a precaution I got some more Pheidoles. So I ended up with a Pheidoles Palladula queen and brood. She's quickly settled into her new tube, and the brooders began hatching super fast. There must be at least 8 of them now, and they're super cool. They've built a nest hole at the front of their test tube, and they also drag big bits of mealworm around, even though they're tiny. They seem generally happier than the other girls, rest in peace, and hopefully everything goes smoothly this time. Onto the Messors. Both Messor colonies have received an upgrade this month. The colony previously in my Ants HQ Myrmico nest are now in a DIY plaster nest. It's my second attempt at a plaster nest, and it went a lot better than the first one. But they burrowed down through the plaster into the drainage layer. Luckily they're Messors, so you don't really have to water them too much, so it's not really been a problem. Some of the seeds did initially sprout, but they've cleared the dead plants out, and they've gone back to using the little areas which have grown, using or storing seeds again. Their numbers are still popping off, and they make so much waste now. I moved my founding colony from the Rakushi Venus nest into the Ants HQ Myrmico nest as well. Although it's a bit too big for them, it's a lot easier to heat that nest, so it kind of cancels out the negatives of it being a lot too big, as they'll fill it up in no time. The last colony I put in there started off at around 20 workers, and within a month there was over 100, and it was great. Onto the Lasiuses. The Flavus colony, they've got a lot more confident. They're still living in the test tube, and I've added in a separator inside to keep it nice and humid. They can stay in there as long as they want, really, because I'm not going to force them out. There's loads of pupae, and both queens are going strong. No signs of fighting between the queens either, which is great. The Lasius Nigers are really booming as well, and there's at least 4 workers now, but they're building and walking around like there's 100 of them backing them up. I love these little I love these little nanitics. I can't the word out, as they're so dinky. They've been munching out on mealworms and loving the heat wave, and they're so active. Onto my favourite girls, the Rubras. If you saw June's update, you'll have seen I had 2 colonies. Well, some of the 4K decided to go on a great explorative adventure, packed up their mini backpacks and pulled up all 6 socks, and they've moved into the aquarium nest. At least one queen went, but there may have been more, as I kept seeing them shuffling out back and forth. They seem to have all settled into the tank nicely, and will hopefully benefit from the 22 Celsius ambient temperature in the tank. 4K colony tank is really starting to get cozy. I think there's more than 4,000 of them now, as they've had a real boom in workers and delays. Myrmico Rubras are known to mate in the nest, so I'm really hoping they bolster their regal ranks with the new elates. The splinter nest didn't seem to do anything to the population in the tank. The few hundred that left were probably replaced by new workers within a few days. They're just as voracious as ever, and I think they may have eaten a few woodlice. Still trying to figure out how I'll move them into a bigger tank when I eventually get another bigger tank. But we'll see how that goes. The smaller tank of Rubras have also had some new workers. No sign of any princesses or princes. Only a young colony though, so I'm not really expecting much. They've moved house, I think, from under the stone into the rotten log. It happened during the heat wave, and I'm guessing because it's moister in there. It was also where I was watering loads during the heat. Pheidoles typo colony is near invisible as usual, and as long as they keep eating, I'm happy. They seem to enjoy the sand layer on top of the new nest for tunnelling under food, so you don't really see many of them on the surface at the minute. Whatever floats their boat though, I don't really mind. As long as they're happy, their well-being is #1 priority really. Apart from that, there isn't much to report. My queen hunting went terribly. I checked every single afternoon since the 3rd of July and nothing. I was really hoping to find a Formica Fusca queen, and I'm going to keep trying looking for those. What I'm hoping for in August is continued growth of my baby colonies. I also want to monitor and keep the ants safe from the water. There are fish to eat up escapees, but that's a last resort. And I've been experimenting with different PTFE lines in different places though, and we'll hopefully refine the process. I also want to find a use for my 40 litre former Pheidoles tank. I'm thinking at the moment my larger Messor colony might appreciate more freedom, and they also might show their gathering trail behaviours. Also, I want to know who the baby fish's parents are, and I want to get 3 to 5 more little froggos. We'll most likely make a video too before August update, so stay tuned, and thanks for watching. Any questions, pop them below, and have a fab day.